Hey everyone, you're watching The Naturalist Capitalist, and for the first time, I am in studio, if you will, with my guest. We've got Mike, who's passed through Salt Lake City. So how's it going, Mike?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Here in Salt Lake City.
Yeah. So, the election is most likely over, but we don't really know.
Well, this first stage is we'll see how Donald Trump takes the news of Joe Biden being announced and is potentially, possibly winning with enough electoral votes. We'll see if that actually pans out, holds up in court, because I'm sure it's going to go there. But
yeah. So how do you feel about how it went? Do you think it's legitimate, or do you think it's fraud, or what's your overall opinion on that?
You know, it's hard to say. I think it could have been, you know, I think there probably is a little bit of fraud on the fringes. You know, I've often seen people posting pictures of, like, their a dead relative. They look up their name and it says they voted.
Right.
So I've seen stuff like that, and I think that stuff kind of happens sometimes, where people go in there, pretend to be someone else, and vote for them. Mm-hmm. Is it widespread? I don't know. I still think, you know, Donald Trump didn't run a very winning campaign.
Right.
So,
yeah.
You know.
So, you voted for Trump in 2016.
Yep.
You did not this time.
This time I voted for Joe Jorgensen.
You're actually in the minority. Most people, or most libertarians, voted for Gary Johnson and then voted for Trump this time. What do you think about that? Is that an interesting phenomenon?
It's, you know, it kind of says some poor things about Joe Jorgensen, if you ask me.
Yep.
And, you know, I think people felt like they saw Joe Biden as more of a threat than Hillary Clinton, possibly. I don't really agree with that, but she was my senator for a number of years, so I have a unique perspective on her, and I thought she was trash from from the time I got to know her to, you know, she's still sticking around. I guess she's on the board of elections now, so she gets to be in the electoral college or something like that.
Yeah.
Gets to vote for Biden. But,
yeah. So what I've noticed is kind of interesting. It's really throughout this election, I felt like libertarians under Trump have been pretty critical of a lot of things he's done. But a lot of them decided toward the end of this election that they were going to throw in with him.
Yeah.
And so there's this weird marriage of libertarianism to this, like, Trump nationalist statism, and I'm interested to see how it decouples itself now. And my feeling, at least, is I want people to jump off the sinking ship. Like, this is not the hill to die on. I mean, if there are legitimate concerns about voter fraud, those are things we should be looking into.
Well,
and care about. But
our girl Tulsi did throw out a lot of suggestions over the course of her campaign to address these problems with election fraud. And,
right.
You know, maybe we should get a second look at that going forward. You know.
Yeah.
But
so, do you think Trump is kind of immortalized, that he's never really going away, just because of who he is?
You know, I'm kind of okay with that if he just goes back to being a Twitter creature and he doesn't really have the keys to the nuclear codes or anything like that. You know, not that I was ever, you know, I didn't really see him as unhinged the way, you know, the media portrayed him in 2016, because I was listening to guys like Stefan Molyneux and Scott Adams and Mike Cernovich at the time. And, you know, he was not the lunatic that he was portrayed as.
Right.
That doesn't mean he was an effective president. I think he probably delegated a lot and, you know, kind of ran the White House from his Twitter account, which was wonderful for us, those of us who like to read it.
Yeah. So throughout Trump's presidency, I've been trying to convince Republicans that the government still has way too much power and that Trump hasn't been reining it in. If anything, he's been expanding executive power. And they wouldn't really listen to me. But now that Biden has won,
right,
they're terrified. And it's because they realize the government does have so
well,
much power.
a lot of those liberties that Donald Trump took came from Barack Obama and the executive powers that he took. So, the shoe goes on the other foot and everyone seems to get all, broken up about it. It's kind of funny how that all works, isn't it?
Yeah. So, given how the Libertarian Party did, not just in the presidential race, but in Congress in general, I mean, it was dismal. I knew Jo Jorgensen wasn't going to win. I was hoping she'd get near 5%, but
I was hoping she'd get at least what Gary Johnson got.
Yeah. But what was really heartbreaking was looking through Congress, and average people were getting 1%. I think there were a couple races, I don't know how much Rainwater ended up with, and then Ricky Harrington got 30% in his race. But overall, it was just a massive failure and proof that people still believe in the two-party system.
Yeah.
So, in your mind, does that mean we should have more of a Rand Paul approach, infiltrate the Republican Party, or did we just not try hard enough this year?
I don't know. I mean, at the moment, I'm looking forward to supporting Rand Paul in 2024. I haven't heard a word about what Tulsi Gabbard is planning to do, so, she's another sleeper candidate to keep your eye on.
Right.
But, that's kind of, I'm getting used to losing elections at this point. I've been doing this a while. I've been following Ron Paul since 2007, and needless to say, he didn't win.
Right.
So,
yeah, I'm thinking about just withholding support from whomever I like next election because, like you just said, pretty much everyone I ever support just does horribly. They don't get anywhere.
Right. I mean, the key is to not get too emotionally invested and realize that, it doesn't really matter what happens in Washington.
Right.
We got to focus on what's happening in your neighborhood.
Right. That's actually the other thing I wanted to talk about is I'm hoping that this proves to people that the government is not going to solve our problems. I mean, there's just been the portrayal of that for the last several months, how Congress has been acting and how our government has been in general. I hope people will take these election results as a sign that, it's on us to fix these issues. So we can't trust the government to do that. The government's not going to do anything for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm still waiting for us to find the end game for COVID-19. I haven't heard of a vaccine yet, but people are talking about it. And, who knows what's going to happen. I mean, I'm hoping that because the election's over, maybe things will start going back to normal. People can start going back to work and trying to put their lives back together if it fell apart, I mean, it's been pretty good for me as a truck driver. I've been busier than I have been. I'm making good money. The rates are good. So life's been good for me, but, not everyone is having the same life that,
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm in the same boat as you there. I'm a truck driver, so alone all the time. Don't really have to worry about mingling with crowds too much or anything.
Right.
The last thing I wanted to talk about was before the election happened, I've just been, in my videos on here and then on Facebook and Twitter or whatever, I have been warning people about what's coming down the pipe and that it doesn't matter who wins the presidency, even if it were Jo Jorgensen somehow. It's too late. I mean, we've gone over a fiscal
She
cliff.
would be impeached before, before she could finish bringing all the troops home.
Yeah.
They would be throwing her out for something.
Right. So what's going to happen inevitably now is I think we are headed for a true depression and most likely a currency crisis or collapse. And the Republicans are now going to blame it all on whatever Biden does, and the Democrats will say it was whatever Trump did, when no one is acknowledging the truth that it's just our monetary system, the Federal Reserve, and it was inevitable.
Well, it's the decisions made by previous administrations. If you really want to dig in deep and learn about this. There's a great book called The Great Deformation, Corruption of the Economy of America by David Stockman. It's a long book, but it goes through the history of all the wrong steps that previous administrations have made. You know, and David Stockman was advisor to Ronald Reagan back when he ran for president. And it's a really interesting character. He also has a really nice blog too. I read it sometimes. But it's the things that Alan Greenspan started with, saying the dollar was as good as gold, and then Bernanke came in, and then, money fell from helicopters, and we're just, you can't print money to oblivion. It doesn't work like that. Check out Zimbabwe, check out Argentina, the Weimar Republic. There's plenty of examples of history of governments destroying their currency and people having to live with the consequences of poor fiscal policy on the government side.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely. So everyone watching, just remember that regardless of who the president is, that these things are coming down the pipe, and don't feed into the media frenzy that it's left versus right, Trump versus Biden. The entire government is in on this.
It is the people versus the state.
Exactly. Well, Mike, thanks for coming on. First time in person. Maybe we'll do it again in person, but we'll certainly have you back on virtually.
Great.
All right, guys, we'll catch you on the next show.